Okay, looks like we have started. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Abu Bakr Abid. I'm here from Hugging Face, and I'm very excited to share with you a bunch of open source libraries and tools that will hopefully be beneficial to you as a machine learning researcher or engineer. And just to kind of, kind of to start things off, I want to introduce myself. So, my background actually is in machine learning applied to medicine. So I started actually doing machine learning about 10 years ago when I was finishing up my master, starting up my PhD at Stanford in machine learning applied to medicine. And while I was at Stanford, I quickly ran into this problem of it being very difficult to share machine learning models that you've built with other people, especially who might not be machine learning people themselves. So like doctors, clinicians that I was working with, and then so started an open source library called Gradio. Makes it super easy to take your machine learning models and convert them into GUIs or demos so that other people can try them out. And so we built that, and we kind of shared that, worked on it for about 2 years, and then we got acquired by Hugging Face. And so now I'm happily a machine learning engineer at Hugging Face, and working on a lot of kind of the open source side, also the product side that I'll be sharing today. So I just want to start off by asking how many people here have used the Hugging Face Hub before? You can just type yes or no inside the chat. I just want to kind of get a sense of how many people have done it, how many people have not. Cool. We got a hi. Hi, Johan. Okay, cool. So I'm seeing a lot of people. It's mixed. Some folks have used the libraries, but not the hub. Okay, great. So for you guys, it'll be kind of a new thing, and for those of you who might have used it before, maybe I'll talk about some things that you guys haven't seen. So by the way, the way that this is going to work is I'll start off with some slides for like the first half of the presentation, but the second half will be very interactive, and I'll share a Colab notebook and we'll go through code. I'll try to keep it interactive the whole time, but okay, yeah, let's get started. So where did Hugging Face come from? Um, it all started about 5 years ago. So we are, as a company, about 5 years old when this paper was published. Attention is all you need. And so what this paper showed was that although there had been a lot of very complicated architectures, especially in NLP, very simple transformers-based architectures actually outperformed all of them. And so this paper came out, and since the paper came out in 2017, a there was an explosion of transformers-based architectures for machine learning. And it started off originally in NLP, but then it went to other domains as well. And so when these models came out, these models were huge. And what we saw was a lot of people were actually trying to build these machine learning models themselves. So they were training them from scratch. So initially it was researchers, but then eventually anybody who wanted to kind of use these models were kind of training them from scratch or trying to download the weights in this very complicated way so that they could do transfer learning. I won't go into too much here, but what we saw was a lot of transfer learning happening, a lot of training happening, and people spending a lot of money to kind of basically replicate what other people had already done. And so we figured that there must be a better way here, and so we built. I'm actually going to go forward here. So we built the Hugging Face Hub to make it super easy to actually. We built both the open source libraries, transformers, but then also the Hugging Face Hub to make it a lot easier to find the machine learning models that you might be interested in. So for those of you who have not used the hub before, I'm going to go ahead and let me share my screen actually, and then you guys can also follow along with me. So the Hugging Face Hub, and let me share the link here. So I just shared the link to the Hugging Face Hub in the chat. So what this is so when I took this screenshot, when we made these slides a few months ago, there were about 30,000 models up on the hub. At this point, there are 138,000 public and private models. And so what you are looking at right now is basically a collection of state-of-the-art, or basically any sort of machine learning model that someone has deemed sharing with the world. And what you see is these machine learning models, they span a lot of different categories. So things like computer vision, but also NLP, audio, multimodal. And what we can do is we can actually take a look at some of these machine learning models. So can someone suggest a category? You can pick any one of the categories that you see here. Anything from computer vision, image classification, or any of these other ones. You can just suggest a category in the chat maybe, and I'll go from there. Zero-shot classification. Oh, that's a good one. Zero-shot. I'm going to pick this one here. So what is zero-shot classification? Well, first of all, you'll see that we have 93 different models for zero-shot classification. Let's click on one of these models. So I just picked on this one called BART Large MNLI, and you'll see this was a model that was released by Facebook. So a lot of different organizations are on the Hugging Face Hub, and they are releasing models and other things through the hub. And so what you see here when you load this up is you see 4 different tabs for this model and a bunch of tags as well. So I'm gonna ignore the tags for now. I'll come back to them. But the first thing is you see the model card, and the model card is basically like, you know, a GitHub README. A GitHub repo has a README. Similarly, a model here has a model card, which is some basic description about the model. And just like you probably wouldn't, you know, use a GitHub README, a GitHub repo that didn't have a README, you probably, you know, wouldn't use a model if you didn't know anything about it. So this provides some context for how to use the model, some information about it. Sometimes it includes evaluation results. Here on the right is actually what's really cool. Most models that are published to the Hugging Face Hub have an automatic inference widget that allows you to try out the model right here in the browser. And so this is where we can actually try out the zero-shot classification model, okay? So I'm just gonna compute this. And so what's happening here is what zero-shot classification does is it allows me to input some text, and it inputs some class names, and I can do classification directly on this on this text using these classes. So typically for classification models, I have to retrain my model every time I want to change categories. But for zero-shot classification, I can use the same model for any categories that I have in mind. So for example, let's say I type in some new text here. So I love machine learning, and today we'll be talking about Hugging Face. So I can put in some new text, but I can put in also some new categories. I can say like the topics today might be education, it might be politics, it might be comedy. And I can run compute, and what this will do is this will, oh, well, this is funny. Okay, so it's saying that this is most likely comedy. Okay, this is obviously maybe an unusual thing. Maybe it's because of Hugging Face. Let me try. We'll be talking about artificial intelligence. Or we'll be teaching artificial intelligence. And see, now it thinks it's this education. So I mean, obviously this model is not perfect, it's making these mistakes, but the larger point is that you can see the mistakes that the model is making even before you even download it, try it out. You can do it directly in your browser, which is pretty cool. And you can also see things like what other data sets were used to train this model, as well as spaces. We'll get to this later on in the second half of the talk, but basically demos that have been built with this model. So any questions about that right now? Any questions about this first tab here? So I've just shown you one model, but there are, as I said, hundreds of thousands of models in these different categories. And so you can do, you know, like GPT-2, you can see what information is out there about GPT-2. You can see how many people have downloaded it, descriptions, how to use it, evaluation results, citation information, and so on. Underneath this UI, everything that you see here is coming from a Git repo. And you can actually click on files and versions to see that Git repo. And this is nice because it allows you to see the versions of the model. There's also a community tab, which is really cool. This allows you to discuss the model and even make pull requests against the model. So if you see something wrong in the model or you want to update the model, you can do that. And then the maintainers of the model can actually update it, just like a GitHub repo. And finally, there are things like settings. And so you can things like change the model visibility from public to private, things like that, which allow you to have more control over any model that you've published. So are there any questions about the model page on the model hub, on the Hugging Face hub? Are there any questions here? Or does anyone have another category that they would like to check out? maybe a different one. We did an NLP one, but maybe we want to try a computer vision one or an audio one. Anyone have any suggestions? Just coming back to the chat to see. I'll give people a second. Do you have any other suggestions for what kind of model to take a look at? Audio classification. Okay, cool. Let's take a look at that. So again, 219 different models on audio classification. You can pick one. You can try it out. Again, some information about the model. You can test it. You can even record an audio file from the browser and give it a shot. So okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on to kind of just the next topic here, and talk a little bit more about. Let's see here. Oh yeah, so just some high level information about the Model Hub. So first of all, there's more than 30,000 public models. At this point, the number is much higher, but there are more than 20 different tasks, 15 libraries, and also we try to get models in different languages, especially NLP models, not just English models, but also models in all sorts of languages, from Arabic to German. And so we actually have models that support more than 180 different languages right now. And like I said, there's a lot of cool features that come every time you upload a model to the hub. Model cards, version controls, interactive widgets, even things like CO2 emissions. You can see that for the models, metric reporting, and of course, all of this is completely free. I should mention that. So this is hopefully a useful way for you to be able to share models with other people that you work with. Okay. So what does this allow researchers to do? Why is this so powerful? So before the Model Hub, a lot of times researchers would be spending time retraining models from scratch. Now you can actually take a model from the Model Hub, and once you have it, you can take it and you can fine tune it on your own data. And then once you're done, you can upload it again back to the Model Hub. And this is pretty convenient. And also, by the way, I should mention that you can also fine tune it or train it on data sets from the hub. And that actually allows us to segue to our next topic, which is the data sets hub. So if we go back, you'll see models is like the first pillar that we support of machine learning, but data sets is the next pillar. And data sets, similar to models, we have more than 27,000 public and private data sets at this point. And you can also see a lot of different data sets here. So I'll just pick one. I'll just pick glue, for example. And you can see just like models, you can see a preview of the data set. You can see some information about what the data set is coming from. You can see models that were built using this data set, spaces or demos that were built using this data set, and all of that fun stuff. So that's pretty cool. And I think it allows you to actually see a lot more information about a data set than in many other places. And there's a lot of, instead of having to collect your own data, there's a lot of data sets you can do. For example, there are data sets on pretty much any topic. If I pick, like cats and dogs, there are data sets of images of cats versus dogs. There's data sets of, I think, Pokemon. I remember seeing this earlier. Yeah, Pokemon generated Pokemon, for example, and so on. And so this is hopefully something that can be a useful resource if you are training your own models or even fine-tuning them. Any questions about this? Oh, cool. Okay, I just saw all of the messages here. Image class. Okay, so I'll come back, and we'll come back to image classification and on audio to audio. Some other, I'll show some more examples later on in the talk. Is Google Deep Dream on Hugging Face? That is a good question. Well, I do not know off the top of my head, but let's see if we can find out. Well, there's something called Deep Dream, but this is a user. Deep Dream. It looks like I don't see it. It might be. Let's take a look here. Yeah, it might be, but I don't immediately see it, so maybe not actually. Image segmentation, I'll come back to that. We'll try to do more examples. Multimodal classification, yeah. Sorry, I saw all of these messages right now, so we'll see it afterwards. And Ryan, yes, the recordings and the recording will be shared, and I'm happy to share the slides as well. But just to catch you up and just to give a quick context of what we've covered so far, we've seen on Hugging Face how you can use the Model Hub and the Dataset Hub to find models and data sets that other researchers or other engineers have shared. So hopefully it can save you time instead of having to retrain everything yourself. So just some quick summary statistics about the data sets. It has more than 3,000 data sets available. And again, just like the case of models, we try to support languages beyond English. And so we're right now at 450 different languages and dialects supported. So cool. With that, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing those slides and actually transition. And we're going to change gears a little bit and start talking about machine learning demos. So before that, are there any questions about anything that I've talked about so far? Machine learning models, data sets, or Hugging Face in general? If not, that's fine too. If everything is clear, then I'll move onto demos. And for this next part of the for this next part, I'm going to share a few slides, but then we're actually gonna get our hands dirty and write some Python code and actually build our own machine learning demos. So I hope everyone is ready to start doing that. But before I jump into that, I just want to ask how many people here have built a machine learning demo before? So what I mean by that is like you've a web demo or a GUI for your machine learning model. Just if you can say yes or no in the chat, that'll be helpful for me. Okay, cool. All right, perfect. So it looks like there's a nice mix of folks. Um, Most people, I think, have not made a demo before, but some people have, which is exciting. So today I will talk a little bit about why machine learning demos are taking off. You've probably seen a lot of really cool demos on Twitter or LinkedIn or wherever you kind of see news about your machine learning kind of information. Why are they taking off and why are they so important? So, so first of all, why machine learning demos? So machine learning demos are really nice because they allow you to actually present your machine learning research to a wide audience. The audience doesn't have to be just machine learning people. It can be business people, it can be end users, it could be your family members, it could be anybody who may or may not know machine learning. As long as they can kind of connect to the internet and use a browser, they can use your machine learning demo. If you're doing research, demos are very important because they increase the reproducibility of research. So I'm sure many of you guys have tried to use a GitHub repo that had a machine learning model, and it can be extremely difficult to get it to work. Whereas if you have a demo, it's very easy to get it to work. You can try using it immediately. And finally, it's very helpful because machine learning models oftentimes have these failure points, and it can be hard to know ahead of time all of the different failure points that your machine learning model has. But if you can share your machine learning model as a GUI with the world, then anyone can help identify failure points of the model. So I know a lot of people, and when we started Gradio, a lot of people said, okay, I would love to show off my machine learning model with a web app. But then they realized that they needed to know Flask, Docker, JavaScript, CSS. They were like, we're good. And really, the old way of building machine learning demos was very complicated. It involved knowing a lot of different technologies and languages and frameworks. And so we actually started building Gradio to kind of solve this problem and make it possible for anyone to build a machine learning model directly in their a demo directly in their Jupyter notebook or wherever they write Python, entirely in Python. Okay, that was the big difference between Gradio and kind of what used to exist before, is that you don't need to learn all of these web development languages. You don't need to understand web deployment or web hosting in order to build a web-based demo. You can do it directly in Python. And since we've released Gradio, at this point, more than 500,000 people have actually built a demo with Gradio. We have about 50,000 people who are using it every month now. And this here is one example of a demo that someone built called Jojo Gan. And what it does, it takes in an image and a animation style, and it renders that image in that style. So here we've seen this. This is a picture of my colleague Omar, and this is how he would look if he was made by Disney illustrators. Of course, it's not just images. There's also NLP. You can build all sorts of cool things. Like this is a new summarization demo. You can do things like audio, voice authentication, and so on. So before I talk about Gradio itself, are there any questions about the motivation for why we're building these machine learning demos, or and any questions in general so far? Okay. If not, then that's fine. We'll go ahead and keep moving. So I just want to show you how easy it is to use Gradio. So this demo that you see here, where you can drag and drop your own images and get a prediction out, this is how you would write it in Gradio. You would do import Gradio, and then you would say Gradio.interface. So interface is like the key class in Gradio. It's the key like high level class, and it takes a function. It takes in some inputs and some outputs. So here we say that the function is called classify image. The input should be a label, it should be an image, and then the output should be a label. If you go ahead and write this in and you go ahead and press launch, you will see the Gradio demo showing up in a new tab. That's it. All it took was 3 lines, and one of them was an import statement. And so besides that, this all everything under the hood creates your machine learning demo, your web server, spins it up, and makes it possible for you to view how your demo would look like if published on the web. Okay. Once it's up on the web, the cool thing is that a lot of people would ask us, how can I share my demo with the community? And so we built something called Spaces. And so Spaces, the URL for Spaces is hf.space, huggingface.space. And so what Spaces allows us to do is actually host these demos for free for as long as you want. And so you can basically copy paste your files there, and you can get a permanent link to your machine learning model or to your machine learning demo that you can share with anyone. Maybe you can build a portfolio of demos and things like that. And as a result, we've seen some very exciting things happening. Maybe for the first time in history, normal people who might not know machine learning details are able to actually use state of the art machine learning models directly from their browser. And so a few months ago, we had this model called AnimeGAN that took off, and a lot of people were using it to actually turn their pictures into kind of like these illustrated versions. More recently, things like Dolly Mini and Stable Diffusion, they're also using demos that were built by Gradio. And so you can see a lot of people are kind of trying to use Gradio as a means to get their machine learning model in the hands of as many people as possible. Okay. And really, I think we're at a very, very exciting time historically. I think up until maybe like last couple of years, you actually had to be a hacker. You had to be a machine learning or software engineer to actually use state of the art machine learning models. But now with transformers, with all these models becoming easier and easier, and with Gradio and with these demos, really anyone who has access to the internet, anyone who can use a browser, can use your state of the art machine learning model. Okay, so in the last like maybe a bit of the class, we're actually going to build a Gradio demo ourselves. So before we jump into the technical details of that, are there any questions? Okay, so we have a question from Ali Zohair. Were there any other ML demoing libraries when Gradio was started? At that time, I think maybe the only real option that was out there was Plotly Dash, which is kind of a cumbersome language to use. Since Gradio has started, now we have Gradio, we have Streamlit, we have Anvil, we have a few other ones as well. I think probably the easiest, simplest one to use right now is Gradio. Literally just put in a function, put in input and your output. And then we also support more advanced use cases as well through something we call Gradio blocks. But I won't get into that probably today just for the sake of time. Does that answer your question? And are there any other questions? Okay. All right. If not, let us go ahead and build a demo. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my this link here. So this here is a Colab notebook, which will allow us to kind of work through this code together and allow us to kind of try out different machine learning models and that kind of thing. It's really exciting when you guys can kind of also edit the code and make changes and see the difference. So I'm going to ask if everyone can open up this Colab notebook, and maybe if you guys can confirm that you are able to open it up and you see basically what I am looking at right now as well. Can you guys open up the Colab notebook? Okay, it's working for everyone. Okay, perfect, great. Thank you so much for confirming, everyone. So let's get started then. Okay, so why machine learning demos? We've kind of talked about this already, so I'm going to skip this part. Let's go down to step number 1 here. So first of all, I should mention that Gradio itself is a Python library, which means you can just pip install it anywhere where you write Python. So it should be easy enough to install. Pip install, I've added quiet here so it doesn't have too many outputs, but you don't need this. Just pip install Gradio. And then we can get started. So the thing to know about Gradio, and specifically the Gradio interface class, is that it takes 3 parameters. The first parameter is a function. So in this case, it's a function called sepia that takes in an input image in the form of a NumPy array, and then it does some kind of transformations to it, and then it returns a new image in the form of a NumPy array called sepia image. Okay, and just by the name, you can kind of guess maybe what it's doing, but we'll see this in just a moment. The next thing you have to tell me as when you create a Gradio demo is what you want your input to be. And this can be just one input, or it could be a whole list of inputs. We'll see an example of that later on. And similarly, you have to tell me what outputs you want. Again, it could be one image, it could be one output, or it can be a bunch of different outputs. And here we accept things like image, text, audio, video, but also more maybe niche things like data frame and plot and things like that. And if you go to the Gradio website, if you go to gradio.dev, you'll see a lot more examples of what can be done here. Okay, so if you have any more questions about any of the documentation or anything like that, just go on gradio.dev. It's basically just a short link to the repo, and then you'll see everything that you need. Okay, so let's go back. So what did we say here? So we said the first argument is a function. In this case, sepia. The second output is images, and the third output is images. So let's go ahead and run this. Oh, did I not? Did I not install Gradio? Oh, that might have been in this one. Delete this. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and define this function, and I'll go ahead and I'll run this. So like I said, this is all you need. And then once you define your interface, you go ahead and you call the launch method on that interface. And when this runs, you'll see the following. You'll see, first of all, a public URL, and you will see this interface that looks something like this. Now, this is pretty cool, because what this is saying is now I can upload whatever image I want, and it will pass it through the function and give me an image on the output. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that Gradio handles all of the pre-processing by itself. So if you give it an image, it'll automatically convert it to a NumPy array, just because by default that's what the pre-processing looks like for images. And then for the output, when I return that NumPy array, I knows exactly what to do to convert that output image to an image. And so you can kind of see that result here. Okay, any questions about this? Okay. If not, then I'll keep going. So this is just another example of a Gradio interface, but this one's a little bit more complex. You'll notice that it actually takes 3 different input arguments: note, octave, and duration. And so as a result, I don't just pass in one input type, I pass it multiple input types. Radio.dropdown, radio.slider, radio.number, and these are the 3 input components corresponding to the 3 parameters here. So let me go ahead and run this, and that'll become a little bit clearer, I think. Let me go ahead and run that. And so here we see the demo here. It also has a title called "Generate a Musical Tone," and so on and so on. So let me go ahead and actually run this. And you'll see a musical note has been generated. And I don't know if you could hear that, but that is apparently the sound of a D sharp. Okay. There are a lot more examples that you can try on Gradio's Getting Started page. Remember, gradio.dev is the place to go. If you go to gradio.dev, everything is linked from here, from gradio.dev. And so there are a lot more examples that you can try on the README or on the Getting Started page, and things like how to add example input. So if you want people to use your demo, it's usually very helpful for them to provide some examples, so that so they don't have to search their computer every time that they find these examples, to find these examples. You can also do things like add state, for example, using chatbots. And finally, you can share demos really easily, called share. And I'll explain what that is in just a moment. But that's basically creates this public link that allows anyone to try out your model. And so what do I mean by that? Let's take a look at this public link, 24220.gradio.app. I'm going to go ahead and share it with you guys here in the channel. Can you guys try opening it up and giving this this demo a shot? Try running it and see what happens. Does it work for you guys? Yeah, cool. So Ocean confirmed that it works. So what is actually happening here? Does Gradio quickly package your machine learning model into a format that anyone can use for high scale and performance? Actually, no. Gradio isn't really designed for deployment type production. So for that, there are other solutions out there. Gradio just lets you build that demo to quickly make it possible for you to qualitatively understand, is your model working or not? Okay, does that make sense? Okay, great. So let's keep going. So here what we have next is I'd like to just share a couple of nice integrations that we have with the Hugging Face Hub, which is what I started talking about, and Gradio. Okay, so for example, this is a model that's on the Hugging Face Hub. I can find it actually pretty easily. Oops, not this. So you can see here, this is a model that's on the hub, Fast Speech 2. This was also contributed by Facebook. But if I click on Facebook, I can see all of their stats. I can see that they've built 9 demos, 329 different models, and so on. And so we found one such example. And so now we have gradio.interface.load. And now we can do is we can put the word Hugging Face followed by slash, followed by the path to the model, the name of the model. In this case, it's Facebook/FastSpeechV2, so on. Okay, so we just put the name of this model, and what ends up happening is that if I was to run this, for example, so you can see this here. This is a text-to-speech model. Here you go. So let's go ahead and run this. And if I was to run this, what's going to happen is that this model's API has been automatically loaded from Hugging Face. And so when I type this in and I hear this, it should sound like me.
I love teaching machine learning.
Okay, yeah, so it's not perfect. Obviously, it needs some work. but it's a pretty good and very fast text-to-speech model. That's pretty cool. So, yeah. So we're gonna keep going. I'll do one more example here. So this here is the code to build a model that's kind of like GPT-2. In this case, it's GPT-J. And so if I was to go ahead and create a demo for this, again, all I do is just load Hugging Face slash Illustrator slash GPT slash dash J. And then I can do things like run this. Okay, so the moon's orbit around the sun, the moon's orbit around the sun has actually been known to us for centuries. Okay, cool. And so you can kind of see how it's very easy if you have a model or a. Turns out the same thing also works for spaces that are on the hub, but I won't get into that. But if you have a model on the hub, it's very, very easy to turn that into a demo. Okay, cool. Great. So are there any questions about any of that? We're going to transition a little bit and talk about how to host your demo for free on Hugging Face Spaces. Any questions from you all? Okay. All right. Let's keep going. Um, since there don't seem to be any questions here. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about hosting the demo for free on Hugging Face Spaces. So once you have a Gradio demo, you can actually host it permanently on Hugging Face Spaces very easily. And what I'd like to do for this step is I'd love for everyone to actually follow along with me. And so we're going to take one of the demos that are in this Jupyter notebook, in this Colab notebook, and we're actually going to upload it to Hugging Face Spaces. So this will be really cool. You guys, if you guys haven't done this before, this will be your first demo that you've hosted on Hugging Face Spaces. If you already have done this before, well, it'll just be another one, but still hopefully interesting. So once you've made a Gradio demo, you can host it permanently on Hugging Face Spaces. The first thing to do is to create your Hugging Face account if you do not already have one. So unfortunately, this does require having a Hugging Face account, but fortunately, these accounts are completely free. They'll never be charged. So if you go ahead and click on your profile picture, and then click on New Space underneath to get to this page here. So for us, we can just directly click on this button here. And so what this does is it creates a new space. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and let me go ahead and share this with you guys actually first. So first of all, if you do not have a Hugging Face account, please go ahead and sign up for one. And I'll pause for like 1 or 2 minutes so you guys can sign up for one. All right. I'm going to go ahead and just confirm. Did everyone go ahead and sign up for an account if they do not already have one? So just, yeah, make a free Hugging Face account if you don't already have one. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Nurjas. What about other folks? Yep. Okay, great. Now, once you have created an account, go ahead and go to this URL here. So I'll just go ahead and share this URL directly. Thank you, Stuart, as well. Okay, so click on this link here that I just sent, and that will allow you to create a new space. So you should see your username here, and you can give your space or your demo whatever name you want. I'll just call it robot test. No. But you can give it a more interesting name if you want. You can give it a license if you'd like. And then you can pick which SDK you want. So in other words, what framework or library do you want to build your machine learning model in, or your demo in rather. And so for the purpose of this tutorial, go ahead and pick Gradio and pick public or private. It doesn't really matter. is going to be your own public data set or private data set. And then click create space. So when you click create space, you're going to see is you're going to see a screen that looks something like this. I want you to scroll down, and where it says hint create the app should be right in your browser alternatively. And so we're going to go ahead and click create. And then just go ahead and copy one of the codes for one of these demos. So I don't know. Why don't I pick this one? I'm just going to pick this one here, GPTJ. And I'll go ahead and I'll paste it here. Okay. So do something similar. You don't have to pick the GPTJ demo. You can pick one of the other demos, or you can build your own demo if you're confident of it. And this will allow you to basically you'll have a one second here. Oh yeah, I don't need this here. But yeah, this will basically run this Gradio app here, and we'll see that. I'm gonna go ahead and commit new file here. And when I do that and I go to app, you'll notice that this app is building. So what happens is every time there's a new commit or a push to this repo, to this spaces repo, then what will end up happening is that the space will get built or rebuilt rather. The space will get rebuilt. And you can see that here it says building, building. If I was to refresh it, okay, so still building, it's still building. Now it says running. So if I click on app, you'll actually see my Gradio app is right here. And I can now try it out. I can try the examples. There once was a pineapple who knew a thing or two about bananas, a box, and a banana bag. Okay, so it seems like the start to something interesting. And that gives you a sense of how to actually, and you'll see that there's a public link for this. I can go on huggingface.co/spaces/abidlabs/robot test, and other people can try out my machine learning model very, very easily. And so this is something that we recommend all of our users to actually try out, saving datasets, models, and spaces to the hub and seeing how their process goes. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them now about the Gradio library or about any of the other topics that we covered in today's kind of session here. And by the way, I'm hoping that some of you guys also went ahead and created your Gradio demos. If you did, I would love it if you guys can share the links to that in the chat. Was there any point that was too fast? If you guys want me, I can go back and repeat any particular thing. How would you install Python package in Hugging Face? Okay, great question from Stuart here. It turns out that every repo can support a requirements.txt file. So I don't know if this one doesn't, but let me find one that does. Maybe GPT-2 something. Yeah, let's try this one. So if you go to this one, you'll see that there is a requirements.txt file. And this file can be used to specify all of your requirements, no matter how complex. You can kind of just specify that here. Oh, actually, yeah, you can just do that here, yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you for the question, Stuart. Are there any other questions about the Gradio library or about Hugging Face spaces? Are Gradio demos available as ways to come? Okay, so yeah, great question. So first of all, I should mention that any Gradio demo that you build is very easy to embed, especially if it's on Hugging Face spaces. So I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of how to do that, the technical details, but it's really just a one-liner in JavaScript. You basically just import this library. And so that's going to be that's possible, and then you can kind of play around with that and just admit whatever you want to admit. But the second answer to that is you can act. So if your question is, can you just take an individual widget? You can do that, but it's going to be a little bit hacky. It's mostly designed for functions. So kind of triggering one component with another component. Easy to do. But yeah, in general, if you just want to embed it, like you want to build a portfolio of the cool machine learning projects you've worked on, then Gradio would be, I think, a really nice solution for that. Okay. Are there any other questions about any of the topics that we've covered? So just as a quick recap, we have covered three things today. We have covered data sets, we have covered models, and we have covered spaces or demos. So if you have any questions about any of this, you're welcome to kind of ask me. Let me put my Twitter is usually the best source of kind of contact for me. I'm going to put my Twitter handle here. Oh, there's another question here. Sorry. Question from Anthony here. Do you need a specific version, Python version in spaces? Really good question, actually. I think by default, it uses Python 3.7, but it is possible to change it. And I'd have to figure out exactly how to do that. I don't know off the top of my head, but you can also install things like, let's say you need to install Ubuntu packages or things like that. You can do that as well, and there's steps for that. Yeah, yeah. And if you want, you can kind of ping me afterwards on Twitter or wherever, and I'm happy to kind of show you how to do that. So good question, Anthony. Any other questions from any of the folks here? Okay. If not, then I think we can probably end it there. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for coming and listening, and happy to share more about Grady or Hugging Face if you guys have questions afterwards, again offline or something like that.
Thank you so much for your time today, Abu Bakar. It's been amazing. I've even learned a couple minor things here and there. So thank you so much. I'm gonna stop recording now, and like I said, this should be made publicly available shortly, not long after this, after 6:30.
Perfect.